to our next guest. We've got Chetan from Aum Ventures. Chetan, welcome to the show.
Hey, hi, thanks for having me. Great to
Did
see
I
you
get the
all.
name right? AUM?
It's Aum Ventures.
Aum Ventures. But AUM, I mean, the fund language used to typically like sort of talk about the fund's AUM. Was
We
that
manage we manage AUM, but it is Aum Ventures, yes.
what's the story behind the name?
No, I think as a personally a kind of a spiritual person, and also trying to find what is the deep rooted Indian spiritual word, right? And I think Om is something which is not only Indian but also it transcends. It's the source, from where you kind of find your source when you say Om, right? So yeah.
All right, that's the spiritual explanation. What's the technical explanation? What's the fund size? What are you investing in? When did you start? What's the story?
Yeah, so the story of home started, quite a few years back. I was investing for a family office and doing tech investing globally. So invested in several, global ecosystems. US did a lot of investments in the Israeli deep tech ecosystem. Quite a few companies got listed on Nasdaq, had a few exits, all of that. And as I was meeting a lot of global investors, one of the common feedback I would always get is that they had zero exposure to India. And on the other hand, I was investing in India. I was also working with some managers in India. And personally, kind of, you can say on my calling or passion and kind of, wanted to work with very early stage founders. And kind of decided to, take that leap of faith and started Aum Ventures 4 years back. And in the first fund, the idea was to kind of do three things. One is to back entrepreneurship and back Indian founders. Second is to back innovation coming from the country, and third was to take the innovation global, right? Because I think that is where tomorrow India can really leapfrog into really becoming a global startup ecosystem. So in my earlier role, I had invested in SpaceX in 2019. So I'd looked at the space sector very closely, and as I was writing thesis for Om, space tech was something which I felt that not many were investing back then, and ISRO over the years had done a fantastic job of how they've been always at the forefront of space. So started meeting a lot of founders, spoke to ISRO back then, and kind of met the Skyroot team, and Skyroot kind of became the first investment from the fund. And then of course we went deeper into the sector thesis, and today in Fund One we've done 5 space tech companies. In fact, one of them I think we are talking after this, right, with Cosmos. And and then similarly with Semicon, when government started to talk about semicon in India, we started to look at again that sector. We've done one investment, Azimuth AI, where we at that time no one was investing in chips back then, and we took a bet on this founder, and today the chip is taped out, and they've won a couple of OEMs contracts. Government is talking to them, so yeah, very interesting. And then with Fund Two, I think the thesis is to kind of double down on the thesis. So I think whatever we are seeing globally is kind of a mix of two, three things which are converging. So one is geopolitics, right? So every country is looking inwards to see how they can develop sovereign capability, reduce strategic dependence, right? All of that. So therefore, sectors like space, semicon, defense are now becoming national priorities. Second is that I think with the advancements in tech, AI, ML, all of that, I think the speed at which you can now build your startup, from an idea to really, building a product has become much more faster. And third is capital. I think if you see, overall globally, software SaaS is almost kind of dead. You are seeing therefore money kind of chasing IP-led, hardware-led startups. So therefore, in the last 10 years, the biggest companies which have made money is all deep tech companies, right? So right from SpaceX to Nvidia to all these AI companies. I think that is what we are seeing now, in India, and of course, India is now at an inflection point because all of these themes are now kind of are becoming kind of you can't delay these things, right? You have to act on it. We want founders to start working on it, and at the same time government is now putting all its weight behind it with the funding, RDIF, all those things which are coming along. So I think overall, just from a timing perspective and where things are and where things are moving, I think these are the sectors we want to double down on.
All right. So, Chetan, I think you brought up some very, very interesting points. I'll maybe ask you to help clarify, conflict that often comes in my mind when I hear two things at the same time, right? One, you're absolutely correct that almost all countries are looking inwards because of just geopolitical instability all around the world. But at the same time, when we talk about the opportunity, we start talking about building a global company and, exporting some of this technology out. So, on a 10, 15, 20-year time scale, what is going to be insulated and what's actually still going to be up for grabs when it comes to exports?
No, I think all these areas, I believe, are tremendous opportunities for us to really build out global companies, right? So, for example, take Skyroot, for example, right? I mean, it's a global company. It can, and I'm sure it will be one of the top space tech companies, globally. One is in that space, anyways, there are very few companies globally which are launch companies, right? So, launch business has the biggest moat in a space tech, space tech sector. So if you can kind of build reliability, and which is what as you start doing more, and you have a regular cadence of your, then you really, there's a big market today.
Would you say that in domains where countries would continue to benefit from collaborating with each other, that collaboration will be ongoing, but in domains, where they're going to heavily contest each other, they will be more inward looking?
No, yeah, that's right. But at the same time, when I'm saying these core sectors like space, defense, semicon, all of that, I mean, today, they are also an ecosystem kind of play, right? So semicon today, if you see, no country is really kind of, taking charge, right? I mean, while say even an NVIDIA has to rely on a TSMC or, others for a fab, right? So there is a lot of ecosystem play. So one is that how do we capture the value in India, right? So first is a more sovereign part of the play that today you don't have enough semicon as an ecosystem in the country, and therefore government is now pushing its weight behind. Large corporates are investing in the sector, right? So to build national capability, that is one, right? So today, as a Indian startup, you don't in the ecosystem you have ecosystem within India which you can rely on, be it a fab or be it an OSAT or be it other things that go to building out the chip for you. So can you, as part of the value chain, capture a major part of it which can be done in India? I think that's the first point, right? Where it's a sovereign angle. Second, if you look at sector like defense, with whatever is happening, we want to build more capabilities in India. So there is enough demand even coming from defense as a budget and allocation to defense, right? So again, instead of we using any Chinese components or any other global components or importing into India, how can we build more local capabilities? And the third is like a sector like space tech where it is global from day one, right? And that's true for all deep tech companies, right? You have to think global from day one. You can't think of I'll just build from India and think global maybe after 5 years. So I think in deep tech, I think that's one of the key things, that how do you think global from day one?
And talking about defense investments, you've done one which has seen an exit to LED Aerospace by Dipinder, Sharang Sakti. Talk to us about how did you find that investment? What was the thesis there? And the journey till joining this new company?
Yeah, so I remember we had done an event at IIT Delhi, and just after that, maybe Karan, who's the founder of Sharang Shakti, must have interacted or would have seen us. So he did a cold email to us on LinkedIn, and we got in touch with him. Then we met him a couple of times, and then they were five team members, all from IIT Delhi, who had started building a counter drone solution. They had built some prototype. They wanted to build like a full stack drone plus radar tech, and found that very interesting, and great founders. So we kind of came in as a first check there in the company, and then worked with them kind of closely with them, and for what he was building, he wanted to raise like a larger kind of round, and I think then he went to Dipinder as well as part of his fundraise, and then it kind of panned out. Deepinder was also building Lat Aerospace, and then he felt that this requires a lot of investment. Why don't you guys kind of, come and join us? And that's how, it happened, and the exit also happened. Yeah.
But so sorry, Dhruv, I'm going to interrupt this flow. But also, I think just to understand, I mean, the question that we have commonly asked amongst ourselves is that deep tech investments, you're underwriting a huge cycle, right? I mean, typically more than what even Indian funds allow for. So huge capex, huge R&D, huge exit cycles. Can India fund these cycles till finish and exit? Because we've not had too many of these exits so far, at least, or we've not even seen the full timeline of a deep tech investment cycle.
Yeah. I think one is traditionally, if you go back 5, 10 years, the investments in deep tech have not really flown, right? So there's not much investment today, and it remains a sector where it's still not capitalized enough, right? That's one. Just to give you context, last year India got 12 billion as FDI, and only 200 million went in space tech, right? So you see the sector where it is today, right? So there is so much which we can do as a country, but we need more capital to kind of take that forward. That's number one. Second, I feel I don't think that's it's a little bit of a misconception that deep tech requires a lot of capex, right? And I've if you compare compare that with a lot of these 10-minute delivery businesses, I think they've required more capital than deep tech. So I don't think that that is true. Second is also somewhere and if I look at, for example, Skyroot again, say a company like a Virgin or a SpaceX or a Blue Origin would have taken $1 billion to reach space, while Skyroot has done it under $100 million. So I think from India we are also looking at frugal innovation, wherein you have that cost advantage, and I think as a country, to kind of do things frugally, right? I think that mindset is great to have when you're building a deep tech startup from India. So, so I think that's first part of your question. Second is exits. I think it will start happening today. All these sectors don't really find a representation on your capital markets, right? So I think capital markets are also looking for opportunities like these to come so that retail can also participate. And I think we are still in that early cycle, and many of these companies which will go and list tomorrow. And from a duration standpoint, uh, I've seen some founders, and in fact, Chiran is one of them, right? I mean, he's moved so fast in terms of development from TRL 1 to now TRL 8, and he may be reaching TRL 9 soon. So I think if you have good quality founders, you can actually shorten your time from start to getting a product out to commercialization. So and then of course some sectors, some businesses traditionally will take a lot of time. So maybe a chip, you may have to take 2 to 3 years cycle to get a chip out from start. And then if we have more ecosystem built in India, it could become faster as well. So I think any startup, anyways, you have to give 7 to 10 years, right? I mean, Zomato took 12 years to be IPO, or a Swiggy similar time. So I think deep tech may take similar time. You should give them 7 to 15 year kind of time frame. Yeah.
And SpaceX took 24 years. We discussed that on the show. You're a SpaceX investor, so good things do take time. Yeah. So, do you think we should bring Sharon on right away, or maybe do we have one final question just with Chetan before we do that?
I think, I mean, let's bring one more friend on the show.
Okay. Let's do it.
Sharon, welcome to the show. Where are you dialing in from?
Yeah, thank you for having me on the show. I'm
Sharon, I
dialing
have
in
to say you-
from. Am I
you look-
audible?
Yes, you are. I'm saying you look just like your picture with the Prime Minister and President Macron.
Yeah, that was yesterday. Yeah. I'm at the Viva Tech Paris. I can give you a big glimpse of what's happening here.
Please,
You
let's
wish
do
to?
that. Do you want to
Yeah.
take your camera
Yeah,
around?
I'll take you. Yes, I'll take you around just for a minute. So yeah, this is the India Pavilion. So we have got 3 pavilions here. India Pavilions. So, yeah. It's a huge event happening here. all Indian companies. It's not divided as sectors. It's all Indian companies here. I'll show you something very interesting. The Unitary robots. They're quite interesting to see. These robots are dancing. Yeah, the show is not happening, but yeah, these are the ones. Yeah, yeah, the humanoids. Yeah. So that's about this.
That you want to like maybe three things that you want to highlight from Indian builders and global innovators as well.
Yeah. Just quickly turn back my camera. So yeah, India has selected 30 startups to display here at the Viva Tech. They're across all sectors of deep tech, including robots. Then we have someone who is building fuel stations. We have someone who is taking the satellite data and then processing it for the commercial applications. We have across all deep tech sectors, AI, space, automotive, mobility, etc., etc. So out of these 30 startups, 6 startups were selected to pitch directly to Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Emmanuel Macron. And they came to our booth. We discussed with them. So we told what we are building. I told that we are building space debris removal solutions. We are sending a robotic spacecraft to collect the space debris and remove it. Then Modi ji pitched for us to Macron, telling that India has the capability of launching satellites and also pulling them down to Earth once they are dead. So with that statement, I think it's an honor that to hear such kind of statement from Modi ji. And yeah, Macron has told that they're keen to collaborate with technological advancements in India, and they're keen to collaborate with companies like us.
Wow, sounds like a very, very cool story, but also talking about another origin story. So, Chetan, why don't you tell us how did you guys meet? What were you building back in the day? How's that story and the journey evolved and kept up pace?
So, Pawan and Chiran have worked together while they were at ISRO. Pawan is the founder of Skyroot, right? And Chiran at that time was still at ISRO and kind of thinking about Cosmoserve, and he wanted to kind of brainstorm. So Pawan connected me to Chiran, and we started talking. At that time, Chiran was maybe serving his notice period. We got in touch. I asked him a few details about his business plan and how he wants to build it. So from that, the conversations started, and we had a lot of back and forth on his business plan and on because I think Chiran comes from a technical background and had never kind of prepared a business plan, and so we had quite a bit of back and forth.
And that must be really deep tech founders, right? Because they must be so obsessed with problem solving that they don't have time to prepare polished bits. So maybe AI helps them in that regard now.
Yeah, but it's also about having that kind of clarity that how much you want to raise and what are your milestones and everything. So after all the discussions, I asked Chiran that okay, this is how much you want to raise, how much you want to dilute, right? And Chiran,
when you're not talking, I think maybe because you're in a conference area, just mute yourself. I think camera can stay on. I think that's totally okay. Yeah.
So I asked Chiran how much you're looking at dilution, and Chiran had never heard about dilution. I mean, dilution for him was a chemical, word. So, so Chiran, you want to come
now
in?
he's removing debris.
Yeah.
And he did not know about dilution. So it tells you that.
Yeah, I don't know anything about equity. So, and the first meet which happened between Chetan and I, so he asked me to select a place. So I chose like an investor is coming and you're going to pitch to him. So you need to be in a grand place. So I chose Novotel for a brunch. Okay, so then we both went there. It was quite noisy place. And then Chetan next day also he wants to meet me, and he said like, let's this time I will select the place, and then he selected coffee shop. Then I understood that the pictures will happen in coffee shops, not in 5-star hotels. So that is where I was when I started pitching to investors. And yeah, when he first asked me dilution, I don't know what is dilution mean. I was like dumbstruck. I was silent for some time. Then Chetan asked me, what is the valuation you are thinking? Then I could correlate some term from between dilution and the valuation. So that's how it started. And also at the later stage, also he asked me whether the lead investor is giving you DD. DD for me is demand draft, and the lead investor is sitting in the US. Why would he give me a DD? Then he continuously was asking whether he is giving you DD. I said like, no, he is doing wire transfer. He's not giving DD. Then later I understood that okay, DD means due diligence. So the industry which we came from, all these terms are new. So every day we learn new terms. Adoption is more important, I feel, for any human being, and I'm in the stage of adopting new things.
This is actually so refreshing, Chiran, and it gives me an idea. Maybe we should start an online petition for, instead of space tech founders like yourself having to learn about dilution, etc. Maybe the data room should include, I don't know, CAD files and simulation data that VCs should learn how to interpret.
Yeah.
This is super refreshing. Yeah.
But Chiran has kind of turned 360, right? I mean, today he goes and pitches at events and all of that. So great to see him completely transforming, as a startup founder.
Chetan, let's ask you that question. What have you learned about their industry, which you didn't know? I mean, so many different things, but one thing that probably, when learning about the space tech industry, why Chiran, that has stuck with you?
I think one is space as an industry is one is it's so humbling, and it requires a very different level of mindset. And I was in fact speaking to Pawan. I said, in your case, the failure is broadcasted live, right, in front of everyone. You send a rocket and something happens, and it's live. It's before the nation. A lot of your ministers and all are attending all of that. So it requires a very different level of mindset to kind of prepare and have that kind of conviction. So I think space is something where you can't really iterate too much, so you have to be best in class in terms of your tech, best in class in terms of the processes that you follow, in terms of before you kind of put out your either a satellite or your launch vehicle to space. And second is, I think from day one you have to think globally. So I think all our portfolio companies are already kind of talking to a lot of global companies for their be it on one side supply chain for some requirements, or on the customer side for a lot of their LOIs and all of that. So I think it's truly a kind of global business, to kind of start from. Yeah.
Great. Chiran, let's just start with you explaining to us what is space debris, why is it important to remove it in the first place?
Yeah, there are about 50,000 odd objects are there in space. Of that, only 12,000 are the operational satellites. That means just 1/4 are the operational satellites. The rest everything is man-made or human-created junk in space. Now, these 40,000 objects are creating greater threat to the operational satellites. So unless we remove these junk, these will go and impact onto the operational satellites and create more and more debris. So if that cascading effect happens, the future generations will never be able to use space again the way we are using. There will not be any GPS, no video calling, nothing, no applications. Now, Elon Musk has filed IPO. He is into IPO, and he's building data centers in space. So there should be space in space. Otherwise, next generations will never be able to use space. So then we are building the solutions where we are building a robotic spacecraft that goes to space, collect the space junk, and remove it from space. So when I first tell this idea to people, they think that we are doing a non-profit business, or why would someone want to remove space junk? Like, if a car gets stuck on road, you can't leave the car there. We need to call a towing van to remove that. Now, same regulations are coming up in space, forcing the satellite operators to remove their dead satellites. They can't leave the dead satellites forever there. So that has created the market now. And we are building those towing vans and refueling depots in space to create a sustainable space for the future generations.
The one big difference, of course, is that space debris is not stationary; it's also in orbit, and it could pretty much be on collision course with your flight path. So yes,
exactly.
Guys, quick question for Chetan before we switch to Chetan solo. Chetan, what are you most excited about for the next 1 or 2 years coming out of India?
I think we'll see a lot more companies coming in these sectors, right? So space, semicon, defense, manufacturing, I think can be a big item there. Still, lots to be done. And particularly, I'm seeing significant interest now coming in hardcore hardware led IP led businesses. One of the things which personally I would love to see is more kind of corporate participation, right, which is missing I think today. So I think if we see that wherein corporates can play a role to come in as design partners for some of these early stage startups, I think that will be wonderful for the ecosystem. I think government is doing its bits. I hope this RDI program and everything else kind of is also implemented and the pace at which it can be deployed. I think that will be critical. But overall, super excited. There's so much great innovation coming from the country, and these ideas can become global businesses. So, super excited to back these next generation of founders and work closely with them. Yeah, and see how we can partner to really make them global and succeed them at a global stage. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on our show. Wishing you the best.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.